During the final moments of my divorce, hearing my ex-husband stood up and did something that stunned the entire courtroom. With a smug smile on his face, he said, "Your Honor, I want every gift I ever gave Rachel and the kids returned. The necklace he gave me after our son was born, the music box our daughter played every night before bed, the telescope he once promised to use with our boy to explore the stars. He wanted it all back, as if love memories and years of sacrifice were just transactions he could undo." For a moment, I could barely breathe. But then a strange calm washed over me. I said yes, I would return everything. But what he would receive would cost him far more than he ever imagined. If you were standing in my place, would you have fought to keep the past, or would you have let it all go? Tell me your answer in the comments below. And if you believe that real strength is knowing when to walk away, stay with me. This is not just a story about loss. It is a story about reclaiming everything that truly matters. My name is Rachel Monroe. I am 39 years old, and for the last 12 years, I built my life around a dream I thought we both shared. A home filled with laughter. A future built on trust. A family that would weather every storm together. I met Daniel in college. He was charming in a way that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. We married young, full of hope, and before long, Caleb and Sophie came into our lives. Two bright, beautiful souls who gave my days purpose when everything else started to crumble. At first, the cracks were small. Late nights at the office, missed anniversaries, the slow, silent way Daniel stopped seeing me, even when he looked right at me, but I stayed. I believed in our vows. I told myself that every marriage had rough seasons, and if I just worked harder, loved deeper, gave more, we would find our way back. I poured myself into our home. Birthday parties with handmade decorations, school projects that turned our kitchen into a glitter-filled war zone, quiet nights spent helping Caleb name the stars through his little telescope, story time with Sophie curled in my lap, the music box playing softly in the background. Those moments were my anchor. They were what kept me fighting when Daniel grew more distant, when the coldness in his eyes became impossible to ignore, when the lies started, and finally, when the truth shattered everything. Daniel had found someone else, someone younger, flashier, Sienna Wells, a woman who looked at him the way I once did. Only this time he looked back. When he left, it wasn't just a marriage that ended, it was the death of a life I had spent more than a decade building. And yet, even in the wreckage, I tried to protect our children from the worst of it. I swallowed my pride when he showed up late for visitations. I forced a smile when Sophie asked why Daddy didn't come to her recital. I bit my tongue when Caleb quietly started locking his bedroom door at night. I thought the worst was over after the divorce was finalized. I thought we could finally start healing, but I was wrong. Because standing in that courtroom when Daniel demanded the return of every gift he had ever given me, and the kids, I realized he hadn't just left our marriage, he had left his humanity behind too. That moment, that was when everything inside me shifted. Not with rage, not with heartbreak, but with a clarity sharper than any betrayal. I was done fighting for scraps. Done begging for decency from someone who had none left to give. The Rachel who walked out of that courtroom was not the same woman who walked in, and that was the beginning of everything. The days after the hearing moved in a strange, heavy blur. I thought I would feel relief once the papers were signed. Instead, I felt hollow, like a guest walking through the ruins of my own life. Daniel wasted no time. A week after the divorce, he sent his list. An actual list, typed, itemized, cold. Every piece of jewelry he had given me over 12 years. The handbags, the vases, the anniversary gifts, and shockingly, the children's things. Caleb's telescope. The books Daniel had inscribed with "Love, Always Dad." Sophie's music box, the one that played her favorite lullaby every night. The charm bracelet he gave her for her 10th birthday with tiny silver stars and ballet slippers dangling from it. All of it. Everything over $50 he wanted returned. At first, I just stared at the list, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. Each item was more than just a thing, it was a memory. A piece of a life I had tried so desperately to salvage. I thought about Caleb proudly adjusting his telescope. The Christmas Daniel gave it to him. About Sophie winding up her music box, the delicate melody floating through the quiet nights after Daniel moved out. They had no idea their father saw those moments as debts to collect. I sat at the kitchen table. The list crumpled in my fist and cried harder than I had since this all began. Not for the things, but for what they represented. Daniel wasn't just trying to hurt me, he was punishing the kids too. For loving me more. For staying with me, for reminding him every time he looked at them of the life he had thrown away. When I showed the list to my lawyer, she was furious. "This is harassment," she said. "He has no legal right to gifts he gave to minor children. We could fight it." She wanted to file motions, drag him back to court, expose his pettiness to the world. But I knew better. Daniel wanted a battle. He wanted me angry. He wanted headlines. He wanted the drama. I was done giving him anything he wanted, so I made a decision. A quiet, deliberate choice. I would return it all, every item on his precious list. But I would do it on my terms. Not out of submission. Not out of defeat. Out of dignity. Out of love for my children. Out of the certainty that no material thing could ever define the life we had built together. If Daniel wanted trophies to parade around with Sienna, he could have them, but he would never touch the real treasures. The memories. The bond. The love that no list could ever itemize or reclaim. I wiped my tears, smoothed the crumpled list against the table, and stood up. It was time to start packing. And with every box I filled, I wasn't just letting go of old gifts, I was letting go of him forever. The next morning, I started with the jewelry. The emerald necklace Daniel gave me after Caleb's birth. The diamond earrings he bought in Paris during the last vacation we would ever take as a family. The antique silver bracelet I wore to every fundraiser, smiling through parties, where he barely acknowledged me. Each piece carefully wrapped in tissue paper. Each piece packed with hands that no longer trembled. Next came the handbags, the crystal vase, the designer heels he used to insist I wear. All the trophies he thought could compensate for empty promises. The work was mechanical at first. Sort, wrap, pack, tape. But then I stepped into Caleb's room and my heart cracked open all over again. His telescope stood by the window, angled toward the night sky, still dusty from their last summer of stargazing. Beside it, a stack of astronomy books, each one filled with Caleb's notes in the margins. I sank onto his bed, running my fingers over the worn cover of Mapping the Universe. My son's handwriting danced in the corners, little stars he had drawn next to facts he wanted to remember. This was not a telescope. This was a promise. A promise Daniel had made and broken without a second thought. I carefully disassembled the telescope, bubble wrapping each piece like fragile glass. I boxed up the books, adding them to the growing mountain of loss. Sophie's room was even worse. Her music box sat on her nightstand, still playing its soft, lilting tune, when I turned the tiny key. The carved lid was worn smooth from her little fingers, tracing its patterns every night before bed. I held it to my chest, letting the music seep into the quiet of the room, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just a music box. It was the sound of a childhood that should have been safe and untouched. Tucking the music box gently into a small box, I added her charm bracelet, the stuffed unicorn Daniel bought her from the zoo, and even the ballet shoes he gifted her when she joined her first dance class. I sealed each box with slow, deliberate care. By the end of the week, the living room looked like a shipping depot, stacked boxes labeled with careful handwriting, a testament to everything we had built and everything he was throwing away. But I wasn't done. I sat at the kitchen table late one night, a notebook open in front of me. Line by line, I wrote an inventory of everything he had demanded. Not just the valuables, but the priceless, the telescope, the music box, the books, the memories tucked inside each one. Item by item, I documented it all. I wanted him to see it, to see in black and white the absurdity of what he was asking, to confront the hollow shell he had become. When I finished, I tucked the list neatly on top of the last box. I stared at the stack of packages, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. This was the moment I could almost hear Daniel's voice mocking me, daring me to crumble. I could almost see Sienna's smirk, reveling in what they thought was a victory. But what they didn't understand was that I wasn't giving up. I was rising, letting go of the weight that had chained me to a broken dream. And in that moment, I made a silent vow to myself, to Caleb, to Sophie, that we would never again be measured by the gifts someone tried to take away, that our worth would never again be tied to things, only to love, only to the life we would build from the ashes they left behind. I exhaled slow and steady, and for the first time in months, I felt free tomorrow. The boxes would leave my house, but tonight I reclaimed something far more valuable myself. The next morning, a delivery van pulled up in front of my house. I had scheduled it quietly without fanfare, without warning. The movers worked quickly, carrying box after box out of my living room. Each one packed not just with objects, but with the final threads tying me to Daniel Monroe. I watched from the window. Caleb and Sophie still asleep upstairs, unaware of what I was sending away, unaware that today was the day we would finally be free. The driver handed me a clipboard, destination. He asked I gave him Daniel's new address, the sleek downtown apartment he shared with Sienna, the one he had bragged about being a fresh start. How fitting I thought that he would receive these remnants of the life he destroyed delivered like unwanted mail. Before the van pulled away, I placed one final envelope on top of the boxes, the inventory list. Every item cataloged with meticulous care, jewelry, designer bags, children's gifts, even the cheap souvenirs from family vacations. And at the bottom, a simple note written in my neatest handwriting. You can have the things, but the love, the memories, the sacrifices, those are mine forever. Good luck. I closed the door, leaning against it for a moment, letting the silence settle around me. No tears came, only a deep, resonant calm. Later that afternoon, I picked up Caleb and Sophie from school. Their chatter filled the car light and easy, and for the first time in months, I realized how much I had been carrying, how heavy it had all become. When we got home, Caleb noticed the empty spaces first. "Where's the telescope?" he asked, his brow furrowing. I crouched beside him, meeting his eyes. "I had to return it," I said gently. "Your dad asked for it back." His fists clenched at his sides. "You mean he asked for my stuff too?" I nodded. Swallowing the lump in my throat, Sophie tugged at my sleeve, her voice small. "Even my music box." "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered. "I'm sorry." Caleb kicked at the floor, anger flashing in his eyes. Sophie just started to cry. I pulled them both into a hug, wrapping my arms tightly around them. "I know it hurts," I said, my voice shaking. "But listen to me. Those were just things. They don't carry the love we built here. That love stays with us. Nothing and no one can ever take that away." We sat there in the living room, surrounded by empty shelves and blank spaces, and yet somehow it felt lighter, freer. That night, after they went to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table. A cup of tea cooling in my hands, I thought about Daniel, about Sienna, about the scene I imagined unfolding in their apartment. I could see it so clearly. Sienna tearing into the boxes with greedy excitement, Daniel standing by, arms crossed, waiting for the satisfaction he thought would come. And instead finding relics of a life he had abandoned, finding the echoes of a family he had thrown away. The photographs, the children's drawings, the old cards still filled with words of love and promises he never kept. He had demanded trophies. What he got was a mirror, a reflection of everything he had lost. I smiled to myself. Not out of malice, not out of revenge, but out of peace. I had given him exactly what he asked for. And in doing so, I had taken back everything he thought he had broken. My dignity, my strength, my future. Tomorrow life would continue. There would be breakfast to make, homework to check, dance recitals to attend. But tonight I allowed myself to sit in the quiet, feeling the weight of it all lift from my shoulders. This chapter was closed, and for the first time in a long time, I could see the first lines of a brand new story beginning to take shape. The fallout came faster than I expected. 3 days after the boxes were delivered, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I let it ring. I already knew who it was. The next morning, an email arrived. Subject line, "You went too far." It was from Daniel. I clicked it open with a steady hand. His words spilled across the screen, desperate and angry. He accused me of being petty. He accused me of trying to humiliate him. He accused me of weaponizing the past. He said Sienna was furious that she had gone through the boxes expecting jewelry and luxury and found old baby shoes, birthday cards, crayon drawings, school report cards, found a life she could never replicate. I closed the email without replying. There was nothing left to say. Daniel had gotten exactly what he asked for. The gifts, the memories, the proof of everything he had thrown away without a second thought, and now standing among the ruins, he wanted someone to blame. Not himself, never himself. Later that week, Caleb overheard Daniel leaving a voicemail, begging for a meeting, asking if we could be reasonable and talk this through. I sat Caleb and Sophie down that night, their faces anxious and tired. We're not going backward, I told them. Our life is here, now together. Caleb nodded, his jaw set with a maturity beyond his years. Sophie crawled into my lap and whispered, I don't need a music box, Mommy. I just need you. And in that moment, I knew we were going to be okay. Meanwhile, Daniel's life with Sienna began to unravel. The shiny facade they had built cracked under the weight of reality. Friends whispered that Sienna was draining Daniel's finances, that she was never home, leaving their infant son with nannies, while she flaunted her new jewelry at upscale bars. That fights had become a regular background noise in their apartment. Then the scandal hit, one night after another explosive argument. Sienna called the police, accusing Daniel of hitting her, of losing control. It made the local news, a small headline buried deep in the metro section. But still, it was there. Daniel Monroe, once so proud, so smug now. Another cautionary tale, I heard about it from a friend. They expected me to gloat, to smile in satisfaction, but I didn't. I just felt tired and sad. Not for Daniel, but for the boy Caleb had once believed in, for the man he might have been if he had chosen love over ego. Weeks turned into months. I returned to my small job at the community art center, painting again for the first time in years. I picked Sophie up from dance classes. I helped Caleb prepare for his science fair. Our life became full in ways that had nothing to do with the things Daniel had tried to take. It was built on laughter around dinner tables, on shared inside jokes, on late-night movies in our living room piled under blankets. And every day the hurt grew smaller, not erased, never forgotten, but dulled, transformed, until it was just another thread in the tapestry of who we had become. One night, long after the chaos had faded, I found a box tucked away in the back of my closet. Inside were a few things I hadn't sent back. Not because I forgot, but because they didn't belong to Daniel anymore. A tiny pair of baby socks, a worn copy of Goodnight Moon. Caleb had chewed on as a toddler, a faded Polaroid of Sophie, grinning with 2 missing front teeth. Pieces of the life that mattered, pieces he could never reclaim, no matter how many lists he made or how many tantrums he threw. I held the photo against my heart and smiled. We had lost a lot, but we had kept the only things that ever truly mattered, and that was the real victory. Not a loud public triumph. Not something you could hang on a wall or cash in at a pawn shop. A quiet, enduring kind of win, one that echoed through every peaceful night, every whispered, I love you, between mother and child. A victory built not on revenge, but on survival and on love that had been tested and proven unbreakable. Spring arrived quietly, bringing with it a gentler rhythm to our lives. The trees outside our small home blossomed, filling the air with a sweetness that felt almost symbolic, as if nature itself was reminding us that after every winter, no matter how brutal new life always finds a way. I found work at a local gallery downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me a sense of purpose again. Slowly, I picked up my brushes, rediscovering the woman I had been before the marriage, before the heartbreak. Caleb started tutoring younger students in math. Sophie made it onto her dance team, twirling across polished floors with a grace that stole my breath away. Our world wasn't perfect. Money was tight. Loneliness still crept in sometimes during the quiet hours of the night. But there was laughter. There were dinners together at our scuffed kitchen table. There were hugs so fierce they made the hard days feel a little softer. And there was peace, the kind of peace that comes not from having everything you want, but from knowing you have everything you truly need. I heard occasional whispers about Daniel and Sienna. Their relationship, once fueled by passion and rebellion, collapsed into bitter fights and public scandals. The last I heard, Sienna had left, taking their son with her. Daniel had lost custody, lost friends, lost nearly everything he had once flaunted so arrogantly. I could have let that news warm me, could have basked in the justice life had delivered. But I didn't. I just felt detached. Because by then I realized something powerful. Healing does not come from watching those who hurt you suffer. It comes from building a life so full, so beautiful, that their absence becomes irrelevant. That was the true revenge, not bitterness, not anger, not getting even, but thriving. Loving, living, becoming one. Afternoon, as I was setting up a small exhibit at the gallery, a woman approached me. She was older, elegant, her eyes warm and kind. She introduced herself as Eleanor Grayson, a curator from a larger institute. She had seen my paintings' bright, raw bursts of color and wanted to feature my work in a national exhibition. I blinked, stunned, me after everything. After being broken, discarded, humiliated. She smiled and said, "Your work speaks of survival, Rachel. Of finding beauty through pain. It's exactly what people need to see right now." That night, after I tucked Caleb and Sophie into bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the invitation letter. Tears filled my eyes, but for the first time in a long time, they were tears of gratitude. I wasn't the woman Daniel had tried to reduce me to. I wasn't a discarded wife, or a victim, or a cautionary tale. I was Rachel Monroe, mother, artist, survivor, builder of new beginnings, and the life we were creating day by day. Brushstroke by brushstroke was more beautiful than anything I had ever dared to dream. The moral of this story: sometimes losing everything you thought mattered is what clears the way for what truly does. Sometimes the greatest victories are the quiet ones, the ones that live not in grand gestures, but in the steady, stubborn decision to rise again. No matter who tried to tear you down, what did you think of Rachel's story? If you were in her shoes, would you have fought to keep the past? Or would you have found the strength to let go and build something new? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your story too. And if you believe that true power isn't about holding on to the things that hurt you, but about choosing yourself, your children, and your peace, then you understand exactly what Rachel discovered. Life will hand you betrayals. It will hand you heartbreaks. But what you do with them, how you rise from them, is the story that truly matters. If Rachel's journey touched your heart today, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a reminder. You are not what you lost. You are everything you chose to become after. And that is something no one can ever take away from you.